All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to LSU. There are three things I lose all the time: my umbrella, my glasses, and name tag. So I don't know what it meant. I already lost it. But my name is Sibel Bargu. I'm a faculty in the Department of Oceanography and Coastal Sciences. And I will not going to be talking about mangroves. I will be talking about phytoplankton, bloom dynamics in pulse nutrient systems, which we are in here. All right, our coastal ecosystems are obviously facing a lot of challenges, and the sources mainly coming from variability in climate and the responses to those variability by some of the human activities. As a result, we have some stressors building up in these systems, including hydrological changes and the increase in sea level rise and water temperature or strengthening of the winds and nutrient enrichment. And these stressors are yielding some potential outcomes as of eutrophication, increase in primary productivity, and reduction in oxygen and stratification that can all result in many environmental problems. But right now, for this talk, which we will be seeing some of the problems we are facing in Louisiana, the formation of harmful algal blooms or bottom water hypoxia. All right, Louisiana estuaries and coastal systems are physically and biologically influenced by Mississippi River water discharge. And like any other river systems, Mississippi River system is also mainly influenced by human activities, land use changes, river diversion operations, or flood control measures, and like levees. And in some of these activities, like levees, can alter river flow, and that might prevent nutrients and sediments going, the basin of the river system and cause wetland loss. And to be able to reconnect the river with the surrounding estuaries and also boost the productivity, river diversions are the human-made connections to river to these estuaries. And yes, it does bring lots of nutrients that can boost the productivity, but create a pulse nutrient input that can cause quickly eutrophication, as well as the freshening the system, which might yield some phytoplankton succession. And with the increasing or warming sea surface, which might influence the frequency and the intensity of the hurricanes, affecting Mississippi River, creating these interannual variability in their discharge and also nutrient input. And these modifications that made by humans changing the system or creating complexity by bringing this river water into these surroundings in different timing and duration and magnitude. That creates differences in nutrient input and biological response. And many of the estuaries in Louisiana, that results in phytoplankton species succession. And again, with these current changes, freshening the system, increasing nutrient and also increasing the temperatures are creating these optimum conditions for cyanobacteria to bloom. And therefore, for the rest of the talk, I will be mainly talking about what does that mean for our estuaries and coastal health. I will give you an example from Lake Pontchartrain estuary. It's an open water estuary, and it does receive freshwater inputs from Lake Marupas, northern tributaries, and at times, if there is a threat to New Orleans flooding, the Bonnecaire spillway opens and brings Mississippi River water into the estuary. And there's a tidal influence on the east side of the estuary. And usually the tributary discharge is seasonal. And in the summertime, if there's a lot of precipitation, we do see these big cyanobacteria blooms. But those are the times usually pronounced when the spillway is not open. When spillway opens, because of the high water level in Mississippi River that creates this threat to New Orleans residents, they open and then there comes a lot of river water into the system and changes the dynamic, not just the chemistry and physics and biology as well. These are different times of Bonaire spillway openings. One thing I want you to focus is, as you can see, the timing of the openings are very different and the duration of the openings are very different. And what we have seen is each of these openings gives a different scenario and outcome in terms of the biological response at the lower trophic level. So this is a 2016 opening. It was in January. And because of the low temperature and low light, even the nitrogen levels increased significantly. There was no bloom observed in the estuary. And all that nutrient that came in eventually diluted and transported to coastal waters. In the 2008 spring opening, and there's multiple spring openings over the time, what we have seen is because there's light intensity compared to winter time and temperatures are warmer, now suddenly you do see a phytoplankton response, but in a succession method. So when the spillway gets closed in the springtime, then little bit turbulent conditions and high nutrient levels yields excess increase in diatoms and chlorophytes. That gets exchanged to microcystis, which is a cyanobacteria that cannot do nitrogen fixation. It's still relying on available nitrogen and phosphorus in the system, but requires a little bit warmer temperature. And it's okay in the lower nutrient levels compared to diatoms and chlorophytes. So there's a shift from diatom to microcystis. When phosphorus and nitrogen gets depleted, then you see a dip in chlorophyll, except if the conditions are available, the nitrogen fixing cyanobacteria can take over. In this estuary, this is a toxic cyanobacteria microcystis. There's a shift from microcystis to another toxin-producing cyanobacteria, dodicospermum. And they are the nitrogen fixators, so they don't need so much the bioavailable nitrogen. They can take an atmospheric nitrogen and convert it to bioavailable one, but they still need phosphorus. Either they can store phosphorus internally, or if that didn't happen in the time, then there's a shift to another toxic cyanobacteria, Cylindrospermopsis. But this time, this species is okay under turbulent conditions as opposed to dodicospermum, and they can also fix nitrogen. And all the cold fronts is coming in, they are resuspending phosphorus from the sediment, and suddenly they do have plenty of phosphorus. They can fix atmospheric nitrogen and increase in their abundance. As you can see, you don't only see a succession of phytoplankton, but you also see a potentially different toxin type that's introduced in the system because each of these different cyanobacteria species produce different type of toxin. Finally, the 2019, we have seen 2 openings, and this was the first time in the history, 123 days, the spillway remained open, and it extended until the end of July. And this figure, unfortunately, messed up a little bit, so it goes towards that way. So the biological activity didn't happen until the second spillway closure. But at the end of the summer, when it's closed, it was a lot of nutrients available. The temperatures were very high, and suddenly we have seen no succession, but the coexistence of 2 different toxin-producing cyanobacteria all at the same time, which is the microcystis and dodicospermum. So suddenly you're introduced in an environment that multiple toxins can remain together and increase abundantly. Usually we do see a monobloom, but in this scenario, we have seen coexistence. And what happened during the opening, everything, all the nutrients were flushed out and caused these cyanobacteria blooms in actually coastal areas. And then when the spillway was closed, started to build up inside the estuary and then kind of extended over time. All right. So this is actually Kanchan's figure he has developed, but this is a conceptual diagram showing in the absence of spillway or river influence, or in different scenario of the timing and the duration of the spillway openings can cause succession and potential outcome for environmental health in the system. Okay, I'll skip that, assuming that hopefully you know what cyanobacteria is. So in conclusion, obviously, it's a very complicated system that is kind of run by the variability in the water residence time, duration, and the timing of the river input, plume dynamics, nutrient availability, and the weather conditions, all yielding to these different scenarios that can have a detrimental effect, not only in the environment, but also human health as well. With that, I will say thank you.